Jack File couldn't stop thinking about the monster Neve had thrown out the window. The window had been high, 10 stories up the dormitory of Kaseret Watch Academy, and the monster had been fleshy. A man-snake, or maybe more worm than snake. Nothing that doughy survived a fall from 10 stories. Still, when they had ushered the monster's shocked victim from her building and into the rain, Kaseret's grassy square had been empty. A spatter of broken glass. Nothing else. Nothing where something should have been. The storm had let up by the time Jack, Neve, and their cargo, Elisa, a young spy for the Quandary of Thieves, reached the outskirts of Fort Upper. Jack was soaked. Shivering, he patted the drenched sleeve of his jacket closer to his forearm. The burns he'd sustained working at Ars Adrudian Mill calmed against the cool, wet fabric. Jack himself longed for a drink of something a little stiffer than rainwater. "This way," Neve said. She brightened the gravel path with the flashlight from her weapons belt. The trail from Kaseret Academy to Fort Upper was forested and barely lit. The lampposts lining the road needed a change of Adrudian, or had either become too expensive in these parts, or there hadn't been any to replace the old dim rocks. Jack marked the shortage in his notebook with a damp pencil. His research habits had lingered even after he'd quit treasure hunting. He wrote blindly as they walked, shadowy trees rising on either side of the road like small mountains. As they entered the gates of Fort Upper, the clouds above dissipated, and faint early morning stars shone through. Neve was up ahead with her flashlight. Jack looked over his shoulder at the young Quandary spy, bringing up the rear of their procession. The soles of her boots dragged across the path, and umber curls were plastered to her face with rain. She'd slung the trident she had insisted on stealing over her back, incorrectly. It would get caught behind her if she tried to unsling it. Kaseret Academy had a poor reputation for education, but the oversight surprised Jack nonetheless. King Faraday clearly didn't care about his city watch. Not when he had fleets of clockwork soldiers to do his bidding. "Keep up," Jack called back to the spy, but her boot dragging continued. Fort Upper was a small, bustling city, the body of which was wide streets, marbled buildings, and waves of people hurrying to catch their trains, kicking up mud in their wake. Neve put away her flashlight, brushed at the tops of her purple boots, and brandished a train ticket in front of her like a shield. She pushed her way through the crowds, with Jack and the girl trailing behind. Rounding a corner, Jack was forced up against the tall iron wheel of a carriage. A heavy trunk teetered on the carriage's roof before slipping and nearly flattening Jack's toe. The driver looked down his mustache at Jack, eyes narrowed. "Watch where you're going, Blue Veins." Jack took a wide step over the fallen trunk and kept on. Stands and vendors crowded the steps at the entrance of Upper Train Station, selling roasted roots, vegetables, and other forage from the surrounding forests. An acrid cocktail of smoke, grease, and burning Adrudian ore filled Jack's lungs and sickened his stomach. He shielded his eyes from the new sun and followed Neve as she climbed the marble staircase. Inside the station, they stopped inside a huge cathedral-like room with vaulted windows and enormous, ticking clocks lining the walls. The crowd buffeted them in all directions. Jack imagined himself a porcupine with quills that stuck into anyone who came near. "Right on time," Neve said, smiling at the Quandary girl.